Monopoly introduction, the second of the industry types that we're going to look at in terms of what you need to be able to know. Just like with perfect competition, you need to understand what the characteristics of a monopoly are. So basically, a single or dominant firm, no close substitute, significant barriers to entry. It is, in other words, the other end, the other extreme to perfect competition, the other end of the scale. You need to be able to describe what different types of barriers to entry exist. And then we need to start to look at monopoly diagrams and how monopoly diagrams are different to perfect competition diagrams. So now the average revenue curve is going to be downward sloping, and the marginal revenue curve is going to be downward sloping as well, but at twice the rate as the average revenue curve. So the marginal revenue and average revenue curves are going to diverge. And finally, to be able to explain why a monopolist will never choose to operate on the inelastic portion of its average revenue curve. Okay, so those are the key points from today. Now, the starter, sorry, let me just, I just need to update that. Won't be a few seconds, hopefully. Forgot to press publish. So in the starter, we're not actually going to do the starter at the moment, but what there is an example of a paper 3 type question linked to perfect competition. So if that's there for you to have a go at, if you want to have a go at. At some point in the future. Okay, it doesn't seem to be turning up at the moment. What I'll do is it should be just there, unless they've put it in a different place. I'll have a look at that later and sort that out for you. So, industry types. As we said, we're going to look at 4 different models. We've looked at perfect competition, and that's one extreme in terms of the companies have no market control, no price setting power, and there are a large number of firms, a large number of competitors. Monopoly is at the other end of that spectrum. So it has a high level of market control. I'm not sure I would agree with total market control, because obviously it's not just the company in the market, it is their customers as well. And what a monopoly can choose to do, a monopoly can choose to either set the price or set the level of output, but it cannot do both, because obviously the consumer has a choice in terms of what they're prepared to pay for different levels of output. Okay, but it has a large degree of market control. And mono, meaning one, there is just, in a true monopoly, there is just one business. So there are in fact no competitors. The business is on its own. So overall, what are the assumptions of a monopoly? What are the characteristics of a monopoly? A true monopoly, there is a single seller, but we can have an industry that we describe as a monopoly if there is one dominant firm. Okay, so in a pure monopoly, the firm is the entire industry. So the diagram for the industry and the diagram for the firm are the same thing, because there is only one. That tends to be relatively rare, but it does exist, especially in things like nationalized industries and utilities, such as electricity provision on Hong Kong Island with Hong Kong Electric, or in Kowloon with CLP, the post office. Those sorts of things are monopolies. What you are more likely to come across is a market which is dominated by one firm. An example of that would be De Beers, which controls over 80% of the world's diamond sales. Now, there isn't always a specific percentage where we would say that's a monopoly. It can vary from country to country. In the UK, a firm is considered to have monopoly power if it controls more than 25% of the market. Now, in that situation, you might have quite a few markets where there might be described as a monopoly. But obviously, if there's a few firms with more than 25%, you wouldn't describe that as a monopoly. You would describe that as an oligopoly. Another assumption of the model is there are no close substitutes. So it's the only firm, and there isn't someone else providing something that's similar. Okay, you cannot easily switch between buying the product from the monopoly to buying something from someone else. If that was the case, then it wouldn't be a monopoly because there would be competition. So there are no close substitutes. And one of the reasons why a monopoly stays as a monopoly is there are significant barriers to entry. So there are obstacles in place that prevent other firms or make it very difficult for other firms to enter the market. All right. So how common are monopolies? Well, they're not that common, but they are definitely more common than perfect competition because they do exist. And I've already given you some examples of monopolies in Hong Kong. Now, you need to know about the barriers to entry or the specific types or possible types of barriers to entry in a little more detail. So here they are. The first possible barrier to entry is economies of scale. Now we know what economies of scale are. We've looked at it. It's this idea that long run average total costs fall as output increases. Now, if you have one large firm, it might be that they are able to gain large economies of scale. For any firm entering the market, the only way they could compete is by also operating on a large scale to make to get the benefit of the cost savings so they can compete on price. In order to compete on a large scale, they would have to invest huge amounts of money to get production up and running at that level. Therefore, that is a barrier to entry. Okay. Branding is also a barrier to entry. So what exactly is branding? As it says there, we've got a definition. The process involved in creating a unique name and image for a product in the consumer's mind, usually for advertising campaigns with a consistent theme. So I'm sure we can all think of companies which have got a good brand image. You know, if you're talking about sportswear, you might be talking about Nike, Adidas, those sorts of companies that spend huge amounts of money on their branding. That is a barrier to entry. That would make it very difficult for another firm to enter the market because, again, to compete, they would have to spend huge amounts of money to establish their own name. Another barrier is legal barriers. Sometimes a company is a monopoly because it's not legally possible for another firm to enter the market. Now, that could be because of patents. If you come up with a new idea, you can patent it. It's your idea, and no one else can copy it unless you give them permission. Licenses, sometimes governments give a license to a firm in order to provide a certain good or service. Therefore, it can restrict the amount of people that operate or the amount of firms that operate in a market, such as licenses to operate a television station or a radio station. Okay, Herschel. Where were we? All right. Copyrights, similar to patents, but copyrights are based on printed works or intellectual property. Public franchises, the government again might give permission to a firm to operate a particular service. So that's quite common in things like public transport. And tariffs, quotas, and other trade restrictions. So governments could use those to protect domestic industries and therefore prevent foreign competition from entering the market. Another way you can be a monopoly is the control of essential resources. If you've got a particular resource that is necessary in the production of a product and one company controls that resource, then they control the product as well. This is where De Beers has come about. Okay, because De Beers mines roughly 50% of the world's diamonds, and then it tries to purchase as many as the rest of them as possible. This gives it its monopoly position, which also might fit into number 5, aggressive tactics. Okay, so monopolies can prevent new entrants because monopolies usually have a lot of power. So if there's a sign of a new entrant coming along, they can reduce their prices, make their prices really, really low, or spend huge amounts of money on advertising, preventing or making it very difficult for another firm to enter the market, or they could even threaten a takeover or buyout. If they think someone else is likely to enter the market, they could try to buy that company out. Okay. So one of the big differences between monopoly and perfect competition, or between every other market structure and perfect competition is the shape of the demand and the revenue curves. Now, with the monopolists, they are the only firm in the market. So as we said before, the demand curve is the same as the industry demand curve, and it is now downward sloping rather than horizontal like in perfect competition. Now, the reason for this is for most firms, if you want to sell more of a product, you're going to have to lower the price because of the law of demand. Okay, people will only buy more at a lower price. Therefore, the demand curve is going to be downward sloping. The monopolist is the price setter in the market because it's the one firm. It doesn't mean they can charge whatever they want, because ultimately the price they charge will determine the level of demand. Therefore, they're going to be looking for the price that allows them to maximize their profit, or the level of output that allows them to maximize their profit. Okay, so the monopolist can either choose the price they want to charge or the level of output they want to produce at, and then the market will set the other. Yeah. So as we looked at before, when we introduced the idea of revenue, when you have to reduce the price in order to sell more, what will happen is your total revenue curve will initially increase as you sell more products, but you will reach a point where your total revenue curve will start to fall. Okay, and this is linked around the unitary elasticity point on the demand curve. Okay, at this point here, we know when something is price elastic, as the price falls, so we move down the demand curve, as the price falls, revenue will increase. But when we're on an inelastic part of the demand curve, when the price falls and it's inelastic, revenue will fall. Therefore, the highest point of total revenue corresponds to when elasticity is equal to 1, unitary elasticity, and when MR is equal to 0. Okay, so that's the relationship we have. We know that revenue falls and rises because it's all linked to the idea of diminishing returns, and the AR and MR will not be the same. As soon as you have price setting power, then the MR curve will fall at a rate that is twice as fast as the AR curve. Now, you don't need to know why that is. It's not in your syllabus to understand that. That's something you might look at university. You just need to state that rule, and you need to be able to illustrate it in your diagrams. Okay, and we know that revenue is maximized at MR is equal to 0. Okay, we've looked at that previously. So if we look at the diagram, what do you think is the highest level of output the monopolist will produce? Well, the monopolist is not going to want to go beyond 7, because after 7, their marginal revenue is negative, so their revenue is going to start to fall. And therefore, their elasticity is at 1. They won't go beyond that point. They do not want to operate on an inelastic part of the demand curve, because if they're operating on an inelastic part of the demand curve, they are losing out on possible revenue. Okay, right. So what do I want you to be able to do with this second part with diagrams? You need to be able to draw the diagrams and explain what is going on. So explain the relationship between the AR and the MR curve. So you don't need to explain why that relationship exists, just what is the relationship. Explain why the AR curve is the demand curve of the monopolist. Remember, price is equal to AR. So that's how much people are prepared and willing to pay, so hence the demand curve. And why do you think the MR curve falls at a faster rate than the AR curve? Why is it not equal to price? Just have a think about that and see if you can put forward some ideas.